Hello and welcome back to the Inspiring Car Dealer Leaders podcast. It's the new special series from Car Dealer Magazine. Now, in this series, sponsored by Man Island Finance, I've been chatting to some of the greatest leaders in the motor trade to find out how they got into selling cars, how they rose to the top, and how they're inspiring the next generation of automotive retail experts. This podcast is available as a video series on YouTube, or you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whichever podcast platform you prefer. Now, I'm James Baggett. I'm the founder of Car Dealer, and in today's podcast, I'm chatting to John O'Hanlon, CEO of Car Dealer Group, Waylands Automotive. John, hello. Thank you very much for joining me.
Hi, James. It's always a pleasure to join you.
Thank you, John. Really nice to see you. So just a quick intro for you, for the people who don't know you. John started out in the motor trade as an accountant for Grant Thornton, where he worked for nearly 8 years. He then joined the Ridgeway Group in 1998, where he worked for 18 years, first as financial controller, working his way up to brand director, and then CEO in 2007. That car dealer business was eventually sold to Marshall Motor Group for close to £107 million in 2016. In November 2017, John started out on his own, launching Waylands Automotive, first partnering with Volvo Cars. These days, he represents Volvo, Kia, MG and Polestar with sites in Newbury, Oxford, Bristol, Reading and Swindon. And last year, the firm increased profits by nearly 15%, making £3.1 million before tax on revenues of £124.6 million. John, thank you for giving up your time today and welcome to the Inspiring Leaders podcast. Let's start with you making that switch from Grant Thornton to Ridgeway. What made you decide to do that in the first place?
Well, I think it wasn't as much of a switch as it sounds. At Grant Thornton, I had trained as a chartered accountant, but we had been lucky enough to have some really great motor dealer businesses that we audited and provided other services to. And as I went further, I specialised more, so I became a motor retail manager. That was the first Grant Thornton dedicated resource to motor retailers. I was lucky enough to get a little visit out to Melbourne to the motor retail group. They've got motor dealer services out there. And actually, they provided less audit type work and a lot more specialist services. So I was able to bring back diagnostic reviews, dealer controls review that could add value to a lot of the dealers over here. And that's when I really started to enjoy it, because suddenly I wasn't just looking after an audit and providing an audit certificate at the end of the field work. You were actually there trying to provide value. You were meeting a lot more of the movers and shakers, the guys who made the decisions. And actually, I really enjoyed the people I was meeting, and I really enjoyed the sector. And I think the sector is a little bit different in terms of the number of different people that you meet, and also a little of the camaraderie around the business. Because even though we're all competing, there does seem to be a camaraderie around the business. So I started doing a lot of work for Volkswagen Group directly in terms of their sponsored dealer audits. So they had a sponsored retailer program that actually they put money in, they just wanted checked up on, and a little bit around about VMH and some specialist work for Mercedes. So I was getting access to manufacturers, but also working with the retailers face to face.
So what was it, John, that really drew you in? You've mentioned a few things there. I mean, what was it that made you go, well, actually, now I want to work for in the car dealer industry fully?
I think because you're actually spending time there. It is such a dynamic industry, but I kept on stumbling across areas where I did think I could make a difference. I did think I could add value. And the issue with being that consultant is you go in, you point out what's wrong, and then you move on. You're not actually to fix it. So there is that frustration. Then you come back 3 months or 6 months, and not a lot of the changes you'd hoped would happen. So I think that's the test is, okay, you go and do it. You go and prove to yourself you can do it. And the opportunity came up. It was just after I just got married. I was away sort of 3-4 nights a week. So it was great to be able to spend time locally. It was with a brand that I thought were going to grow. in terms of Volkswagen and Audi. I was with someone I really wanted to work with in terms of David Newman, who had started the business the year before. So a lot of things came together that allowed me to join at the right time and get an opportunity for some participation in the equity.
So when you join that business and you've got your first week under behind the desk and you've joined the car dealership world, what did you actually think? I mean, did you know then that you'd made the right choice, or was it a bit of a shock to the system?
There was a couple of wobbles, to be truthful with you. I turned up and, bringing a laptop into the organisation meant we doubled the computing power of the business. It was very manual. The accounts were done in pencil, believe it or not, and they were cumulative. So there was lots of easy wins for me to enjoy, but a lot of hard work. And I think that gave me more of an insight, because actually I had to get into the nuts and bolts of every department. I had to learn how they operated. And then that allowed, I had quite a clean piece of paper to actually draw up what was important, what should we be reporting, how we should be reporting it. And I've always been of the mind, only, report on what you're going to use, because so often a report's produced and built, and we were really keen to keep it as clean as possible. The business that we had did have a few ex-Hartwell guys in it, so we had that core of process and procedures and forecasting, but it was then, how do we turn it into numbers that we could actually use and we could influence in the business?
So you started in the finance team there, and over the years worked your way up to eventually become CEO. I mean, that's an incredible career path. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about how that journey took place? I mean, how did you start from a finance team to work all your way up to eventually leading that business?
Well, there's a path in the trade for accountants. So there are a few accountants who do lead a few of the businesses. Some great businesses in our sector. For me, I joined as finance controller, but I clearly wanted to get to FD as quickly as possible. But I did have to earn my spurs and prove I could do it. The difficulty is, especially in a smaller organisation, once you get those basics working, the basics are working, is then, okay, how do I begin to add value? And of course, you can't help yourself. You begin to just actually look at some of the issues and some of the opportunities actually could we exploit. And I was lucky with David, the chairman, actually allowed me a little bit more rope. So very quickly, not only was I doing the account side, I was also general managing a business. I had a great sales manager, a great after sales manager who really helps and support me on that journey. But then I got to take on the Volkswagen brand director role. And again, suddenly there's a very different feeling from pointing at where the numbers are wrong to actually having to go and do that. And that's everything from, your most important negotiation of the year, which was making sure you're getting your targets right for cars and parts, right through to driving that business on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, make sure the results there, because I didn't have anyone else to blame. It suddenly was on, and I really, really enjoyed it, and hopefully I earned the trust of not only the management team and the chairman, but also the manufacturers, and that then allowed me to take on more. The rise to CEO wasn't one I was expecting. It came after 2008, where the chairman wanted to pull back a little bit, and we were lucky enough to take on Dash Gupta, and Dash explained to me that he wanted to be MD, so I had to be chief executive. So the CEO name came around, and Dash was fantastic for the business. I learned a lot watching him, work for us, work part of the team. He was that turbo, but you could tell he was bigger than where Ridgeway were, where we wanted to go in the short to medium term. So we had that sort of 8-9 months that really turbocharged us, and then allowed us to go up to the next level.
So you took on Dash Gupta in your time there?
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, that you must have been an incredibly formidable team when you were working together. It
was at a time where we'd just gone through quite a significant piece of growth, and actually having Dash there was fantastic for us because he challenged everywhere. The difficulty is sometimes, you don't need to climb every mountain. Sometimes we've got to go out and actually, reap what we've sown. Dash likes to climb mountains. That's what his strength is, and he is phenomenal at it. So that was the part for us. Yeah, it was an incredibly exciting time for us all. And then, Dash went off to start, that monumental tour at Marshall's. And we just went back to, taking on the learnings, improving what we were doing and continuing to grow that business.
Let's take that Dash point a little bit further, because this podcast is all about inspiring great leaders, and clearly you've done that with Dash. He's gone on to lead an incredible business, which did eventually buy Ridgeway, didn't it? Which we'll come on to also. What was it like managing someone like Dash and others in the business and helping give them what did you say to those people to help them succeed?
I think that'd be it's harder to say I was managing Dash. Dash is a phenomenon, and actually, if you look at sometimes your management team need harder, closer management. Sometimes you've just got to point to where you want them to get us to, and let's go and get it. And Dash didn't didn't need to learn much from me. He was a seasoned motor trade veteran even then, and he knew what he wanted. So that was the part where there's some managers, you understand, you've got to keep the hedges nice and tight. Some managers, you keep it wide, and you've got to understand, but that's understanding your team, and knowing when to push and when just to back off and make sure that you're checking in regularly. So that's been a part of what we do. We're not as dictatorial. There's certain things that I'd always expect to see in a business, and we try to make it as clear as possible. These are our hygiene factors. Here's what we expect you to do, daily, weekly, monthly. But within that, if you're doing a great job, you've got a lot of freedom, and we will invest to support you do what you need to do. And that's what a lot more for us than against us.
A lot of people will look at your career, John, and that meteoric rise that you had at Ridgeway, and your success since then as a real inspirational story. I mean, is there a bit of a secret to that success? I mean, is there a mantra that you live by that's helped guide you throughout your career?
I think there's a lot of hard work. A lot of people, and I know, looked and say, well, you're lucky, you've got Volkswagen, you've got Audi in the south. You make your own luck. Whenever we talk about what we do and how we do it, yeah, we have a clear ambition. That ambition is supported with values. And then we set out clearly how we want to work within that. So that's working with a great brand, or brands. And one of those brands we work with is Weylands, or Ridgeway as it was. And that's about setting out, this is what, it is a privilege to come and work for that brand. We then work really hard to make sure that we are partnering with the best brands, but it's doing what we say we're going to do each and every time without fail. And those are easy things to do. They're not as easy to do every single day. And that's the part that I think sometimes surprises. We are in the business. We do work hard, with James, with Richard, the new board team. I look at Dawn, Julie, April, and I see those guys who are all working as hard to make sure that we are performing. So, yeah, we try to get the very best people, but we're here to deliver every single day. We've got to earn our money every day. I don't know if that's a little, is that little work ethic coming through, but it's a key part of what we expect from everyone.
John, can anybody in a dealership become the CEO, regardless of what department they work in? I mean, if somebody listens to this, wherever they work in the business, can they eventually aspire to lead that business?
I think it's the joys of the motor trade, and it's a fantastic trade for that. And you look at some of the leaders, even in the big groups, they're not all from a particular background. Yes, you've got accountants, but you've also got, sales execs who went transaction, general sales managers, general managers, but you've even got, after sales. I shouldn't say even. Richard will be throwing stuff at me. We do, from any part you can make it. And actually, we start with, you are the chief executive, the managing director of your own department. So if you can get to and actually with dedication, with a level of commitment, you should be able to get to that manager position. Once you're in that manager position, I think the world's your oyster. But we are still demanding. I think it is changing, but we're demanding in terms of hours. We are demanding in terms of commitment as a trade. We're in the retail trade, we're 7 days a week. Not quite 24/7, but sometimes it feels that way because you do take it home with you. You do think about it a lot. So the quick answer is, yeah, anyone can. Start off by making sure that you're growing, you're being pushed towards manager within a department, then from that department grow into the site, from the site, because I think a few people, a lot more people than we think can do one site. The guys who do grow further are the ones that can do more than one site, because that's a trick, doing 2 sites, 3 sites. And if you can do 3 sites, then really you're going to have a great career in this trade.
We'll come on to Weylands in a little bit more detail in a moment, John. But I would just like to go back to that eventual sale of Ridgeway to Marshalls. Tell me a little bit about how that came about. I can sort of guess, but if you, in your own words, would be nice. And what was it like selling a business for over £100 million?
I think because you had different parties. The majority shareholder was reaching that age where you do begin to worry that you could lose more than you're gaining. And at the time, I was going to say it was a time of great political upheaval, but it seems we have that all the time now. It was pre-Brexit. We got an offer from a party for over 100 million. And at that point, David said, that looks like the number for me. And actually, I couldn't disagree. That is life-changing. That's not just generational wealth, that's multi-generational wealth. So David wanted to take that offer, fell through. And I think as soon as Dash could smell the opportunity, it came in, and it fitted incredibly well on a strategic geographic basis for Marshalls. So, I applaud Dash for, making that decision and driving the sale through. And it's difficult because you suddenly go from being and I'm generally more open than closed. I generally tell people more what's happening rather than less. So that was the most difficult part, where we couldn't tell, the guys that you work hand in glove with, your operating board, we just couldn't tell them. So there was literally 4 or 5 of us who knew what was happening up until the last sort of month or so.
It certainly propelled the Marshall business, didn't it? The acquisition of Ridgeway into that sort of much bigger business that it eventually became. It must though, that when you were dealing with that deal with just 4 or 5 of you, it must have been quite a stressful time. I can only imagine what the due diligence is like on a deal of that size.
I think that there is a lot, but I guess the joy of Ridgeway, and it's part of my makeup, because I'm an accountant, I do want to lie straight in my bed at night. I never want to have to worry about the balance sheet. So we were in good shape. Our FD at the time, Dan Taylor, he had really got us into a position where, there was a lot of due diligence, but there was nothing of any particular note or concern that we couldn't deal with, we couldn't talk about. I also think the way the the deal was done was on a lockbox mechanism. So the value was agreed unless we found a major issue, and there was no major issues. So from that perspective, it didn't take a long time. And I think it was a shock to the teams, and to a lot of the guys when we had to tell them.
Yeah, but they certainly ended up in good hands, didn't they? So when you sold that business, when that business was sold, you said you were an equity partner. There's obviously there's a payday at that point in time. You're sat there at home or in your luxury yacht, I'm not sure which, wondering what to do next, John. What made you think, I'll tell you what I want to do. I don't want to play golf. I want to start again and crack on with another car dealership. How did that decision making come about?
I don't have many hobbies, so I couldn't play golf. I couldn't go out on the boat. Don't have a boat that flies or floats, etc. So no, it was right back to, I was 47, 48. I knew a lot of people. I did have a reputation. So I think from that perspective, you feel like if there's ever a time that we're going to go back in and do it, it was then. Let's get back on the horse. So I did have, it was over, it was the best part of 17, 18 months, but it was probably only 4 or 5 months where I wasn't really doing a lot. You start planning, you look for the opportunities come and go, and then you find the one that you want to do. And that was, with Volvo in Reading in November 2017.
And you mentioned it was a time of, when Ridgeway was starting, there was a time of upheaval. And actually, since then, it's been an incredibly challenging time for the industry, hasn't it? Some huge highs and some extreme lows. When you were planning on launching your business, agency sales were clearly on the horizon. Some people, and I know some banks, are very much put off by agency sales because they don't really know what it means, what the future holds for it. What made you think that actually, yes, franchised and the agency future, be that what it is the way that I want to go? And why didn't you start a used business instead?
Well, I don't think agency was really anything. I think we knew there would be challenges, but I think a lot of the challenges hadn't quite appeared. Used car supermarkets were seen as a challenge to the franchise network at that time. I don't think we had fully enjoyed digital. I don't think we'd fully enjoyed the rise of agency, penetrating into the manufacturer psyche. So I think, in fairness, I don't think that was there. For me, it was more around, actually, could I where did I feel I could actually add the most value? And that's in the world of franchise dealerships. Maybe I should have done a little bit more due diligence myself of what was coming through. But there's always been challenges, James. Every year I've been in, there's always been something else, from Rip-Off Britain back in the sort of late 1990s into the early 2000s, right the way through to diesel emissions. We've been knocked senseless, with recessions and COVID and everything else. There's always something going on. And I think that also does appeal to me. And I don't want to say that in any sort of, I do like to take a battering, but we do take batterings. And I think it's actually, there's always a way through. We'll always find that way. And if we can just be a little bit, cleverer, a little bit faster, a little bit more responsive, we can be better off than the next guy. We're better off than the next guy and probably making a living.
Yeah, and I think fundamentally people want cars. They still need modes of transport, and actually at the core of it, they need to get about, don't they? So there is always that need.
And I think sometimes we get caught up with what works in a big metro, and actually we've got one big metro in the country, quite a big one in terms of that mega city, London, but the rest of the country is in the country, so we do need cars still to get around, and people love the cars, and I think that is still a unique part of the UK and the British thought. Your car is part of you. New house, new car, all those little sayings that we know. So not only do I think that we need it, I think that we also still want a car, and we want to have our own car. And that's why when you look at some of the big things that were coming, them not really arrived, whether that be, subscription. Yeah, there's been some subscriptions, but it's not been the outright success. Some of the subscription models are just 2-year PCH with an easier get out. So I think we're just looking at it, the biggest disruption, it's not even what we call the disruptors, and I know you do cover it off quite a lot in the podcast. It's been around for me, is around agency, and actually how is agency delivered. But for me, that's about actually understanding what's the needs of each stakeholder and then ensuring that my business is absolutely set up to work hand in glove. We're a partnership, but we're not an equal partner with the manufacturer. It's their pitch, we get to run around with the ball occasionally, score the odd goal. But let's not forget where we are. So yes, can we influence? Yeah. Do we have a duty to influence as much as possible? Yes. Point out quietly where things are going right, where things are going wrong. But that's about the relationship. And actually, you've got a few counters in the bin to earn that relationship. And, I never take that for granted, and we keep working hard on that.
Customers are basically at the heart of everything in Man Island.
It's a well-worn phrase to say we're a people business, but that's exactly what we are. We all care and want to get things over the line for you as a dealership.
Although it's a very fast-paced, pressurised environment, we have fun.
We're very friendly, we're very welcoming, but we're also very professional as well. We like to get the job done.
Our relationship with Man Island has been centric to us doubling our finance business over the last 12 months.
So Man Island are quite unique in that we're a prime bank-owned lender, but we also work with a variety of other finance partners to give up the all-round package.
As we've grown as a lender, we're now on market with the products that we have, hire purchase, PCP, lease purchase, etc.
We're agile, we're resilient, we're always forward thinking in anything we do. We always want to provide our customers with the best possible user experience.
We don't want to be the biggest in the market, we just want to be the best in the market. And that really for me is all about the people relationships that we have with our clients, whether they're dealers, brokers or indeed the end user.
So, rewinding the clock back to that time where you're deciding what to do next, how did you actually turn that into Weylands? How did you go about launching that business? There'll be many people listening to this who would like to do exactly the same thing, but won't even know where to start. Can we just tell them a little bit about how that began?
I think for me, it was easier in terms of I knew who to call. And that's not only at the brands or the manufacturers, that was also with funding and financing. And also my little wealth event meant that I could start the business, with that equity there. So I think there was a few areas where I did have a distinct advantage. But if you take a step back, it's who do you want to work with? And the danger is you choose a brand that I think you do feel comfortable with and around, if you're doing it at a smaller stage, because you've got to be, Mr. Volvo when you're out, Mr. MG when you've got to be comfortable with that. And then it's reaching out, and then it's actually coming up with the reasons why that brand should partner with you. And then making sure that you can afford to do everything that you do. We do invest at Weylands in the long term, and that pays off as long as we get to the long term, is what I always tell the guys. So yeah, we make hefty investments in facilities and people in our systems to make sure that everyone does have the best possible advantages. The other side of the coin is we do pay more for that in the short term. So making sure that you're well placed. I think for me, it was the first thing I considered was which brands did I want to work with? And that was understanding more about which way. And I was, I think I spotted this EV thing was coming a little bit earlier than maybe some, or maybe I wasn't as dismissive of it as sometimes in our trade we do get, oh, that'll never catch on. And it does, and it will. And that's why we worked really hard to, Volvo, I saw having an electric future. And And we're now beginning to see what that really means when you see the new product, EX30 and EX90 coming through, but also their commitment is huge in terms of getting to, 2027. Generally, we will be electric. But it was after that, who else did I want to work with? And my thought process was premium with Volvo. Kia would be our volume and MG would be our budget. But some of the product coming out of these guys is phenomenal. You look at the new EV9, that's a premium product. So I've had to adapt, but I think if we can be with the strongest brands on EV, then I'm in a great position. And that's why, Polestar, it's a really clever model that Jonathan Goodman's put in there in terms of their representation. He's not trying to do a Tesla, it's different volumes, but to be the premium SUV, and there's only 2 global brands at the moment who are doing pure electric, and that's Polestar and Tesla.
So does this mean you're looking at those Chinese brands that are coming across to these shores with big EV product ranges and thinking they'll be a nice fit?
Yeah, no. I've got
no comment.
No. It's right now. It's a no.
Yeah,
it's a no, right. James. I'm really happy where I am, and we've gone through. I'll caveat this at the end. We've gone through quite a lot of growth in the last 2 years. We've gone from that 4 sites to 10 sites. We've had to strain, our strategy, our first strategy that we laid out was get to 100 million. We changed that quite quickly after a couple of years to get to 250 million turnover. We've now changed it to 16,000 units because agencies arrived. But behind that is a 40 million balance sheet. Behind that is actually making sure that we are as prepared as possible. So we will have completed the Volvo, MG and Polestar CIs, so the corporate identity. We've got 2 more Kia to do, but we've got a lot more work to make sure that we are robust within that. And that's the bit where people see rapid increases, but there's also that part where you've got to be quite strict and say, no, we're going to fix what we've got. I think we've got some great representation. I think with MG, we've probably got, and this is where I fall out with a few folk, I think we've got a great Chinese brand, a brand with so much potential, a brand that's got a legacy around about its name, and it's also got a jump in terms of that car park. We've just, between ourselves and MG, have got to learn how to exploit that fully. But I think with that, Volvo in effect is owned by Chinese. Polestar is owned again by the same company as Volvo Geely. So I believe I've got enough exposure to China. That's not where I see more of our growth. I want to continue to work with our partners. I'd rather have deeper, more meaningful relationships with a few brands rather than just taking on brand after brand after brand, because they won't all work. And that is something I'm really cognizant of. So we fix our own brands, and I'll stay a very interested observer, because it's going to be an interesting few years as the Chinese come in.
It is an interesting take, that, because you look at other businesses that have just dealt with soulless brands, people like Stephen Eagle, Toyota, Lexus, incredibly successful business. Also going to be on this podcast. And then you look at other businesses, like Virtue and some of the listed businesses that have got huge spreads of manufacturers in their portfolio, and they also seem to make it work. So it is interesting to see how different people do it. One of the things you mentioned there is that the first thing you did was pick a brand when you launched Weylands. What came next? Was it finding a premises? Was it staff? What was it the next step to actually get Weylands up and running?
Well, at that time, it was to find a dealership. We the trade we were buying was in another business, and that facility wasn't available. The property we were building also was being built, so that wasn't available. So we had to move into a trade counter unit, which wasn't great. We had 22 car parking spaces servicing Reading as a market area. And if you know, Reading is a fantastic market area. You know, it's the biggest town that's not a city. You're just outside London. I think it worked really well, but we had 22 car parking spaces, 4 ramps, and a 1.5 car showroom. We could get 2 in there, but it was a bit tight. No air conditioning. So we had the coldest winter and the hottest summer. It was an experience. We've got anecdotes, but no, it was more, that was the means to get us into the Reading and into Volvo brand while we were waiting for the new site to be built. But one wasn't going to work for me in the short term. I needed more. I think you've got to have a depth of relationship. That depth of relationship does come from representation. So I went and spoke to Mark Jones and the guys at Fawcett's, and we took on Newbury, which was contiguous. So again, you're beginning to see some of the lessons that I'd learned in the previous begin to come in. And, you know, that's a great business, Fawcett's business. It's oldest Volvo dealer in England, and all those parts, fantastic database, versus Reading, which didn't have such a fantastic database. So those 2 dealerships worked together. And then I was just fortuitous, you know, to be able to get both the Oxford and Swindon opportunities, which I think worked for both the parties in terms of the level of investment that they would have been needed, that I was willing to do because I was at the beginning of the journey, versus the incumbent who, you know, wasn't quite so keen to make that level of investment. But we do our own numbers, don't we?
I would usually ask guests on this podcast, if you were going to do it all over again, what would you do differently? And you have done it all over again. So what was it that you took from Ridgeway when you launched Weylands that you thought, I'm definitely doing it that way and I'm definitely not going to do that?
It was generally everything. There, a lot of what we've done, you know, anybody who worked at Ridgeway could see, if not similar, a lot of the DNA is there. So how we operate, the structures of the meeting, some of the systems are different, either because of the brand or because, you know, there was better things that we didn't use. So we use Salesmaster for our stock control, and that was something we hadn't used within Weylands, but had been developed. So there's areas that we've gently improved, but if you look at having that clarity round about reporting, that's all there. What reporting that we do, that's all there. How we forecast, that's all there. I guess the learning is to be a little bit braver sooner, because we were full of angst as we made certain investments, whether that be facility, whether that be round about the level and quality of teams we could afford. And, you know, we began to learn, you invest earlier, you make sure everything around about you is strong and robust before you take the next leap. And even things like academy, you know, we were probably 12 years in before we launched the academy with Ridgeway. You know, we have now got a Waylands Academy. Now, whether it's inductions, where it was specialist training on agency, whether it's our Future Leaders program, we've now got that. And it's 5 years. So I think, again, it's learning from the lessons took us a little bit longer and just deploying those learnings as soon as I could. You know, Ridgeway really worked for us. And I guess that's the part where I don't want to get it all sort of rose-tinted glasses, but there wasn't many things that we did wrong that I wouldn't happily do again.
I suppose that's what gave you the confidence to do it again.
Yeah, and I think when you've got the ingredients and you sort of know how to follow the formula, then you can do it again. What has changed is what goes on round about us, and whether that was a rise and rise of digital, whether that is how the distribution model works. But that's what I get paid to work for, and that's where I can move my time. So yeah, unashamedly, a lot of my time has been used in and around, you know, agency. and how that agency is deployed. So yeah, it's a lot of reading of a lot of legal documents. It's a lot of influencing, saying, what about this? You may have missed that. Can we do that? So I can spend my time where we need to. So there's certain times that might be involved in property and trying to find property solutions. Other times it's actually back getting into the running of the business. But we've got some great guys who do that, you know, in terms of Richard, Dom, James, you know, do that, a lot of the daily stuff, you know, without fail. And it allows me just that little bit more breathing space. I guess that's what I enjoy.
When you're starting up a car dealer business, John, what's the most important thing to focus on? Is it sales, or is it the brand that you're building? Is it cash flow? Is it finding the right staff? You've mentioned lots of things there, but what would be the one that you pick out as number one, most important?
You've always got to be able to pay the bills. You know, nobody's ever going to thank you for not paying the bills or bouncing a direct debit. That's the easiest way to end a relationship with a manufacturer. So yes, do you have the cash available to actually pay the bills is number one, probably number 2 and 3. But then when you're starting a business, you need to get as many there's usually a reason why you've bought a business. A lot of our businesses we've bought been more value. We've not paid huge chunks of goodwill. So the businesses that there's issues within them, and we've been able to turn that. But the easiest way to turn it is getting a lot of cars on the road that you can then have part exchange. You can sell them the next car, and you can service them and put parts on the cars. So yeah, and that you've got to hold your nose. You've got to work a little bit harder, maybe not take as much profit out of each and every unit, but that's what you do. So make sure you've got enough cash in the bank, make sure you're getting your cars on the road, and then make sure you've got the team that sells the next car. And that's not just sales, that's after sales as well. And, you know, we made a couple of investments with April around about marketing. I'm not a marketing guru, and April's been phenomenal. She was employee number 1 and, you know, really helped me get that launch and get the brand out there. Second, you know, Richard is fantastic. You know, he was running Marshalls for after sales. He's now running Little Weylands for after sales. But again, an area that I understand, I don't have the depth of knowledge. He does it day in, day out. You know, James does the numbers. I can't do the numbers. I don't really want to do the numbers. So again, it allows him to play to his strengths, learn the business, and I can do it. You know, Dom, one of your questions I know you always ask is, tell us about the first car you've sold. I've never sold a car. And that's one again. So I try to get the best people who understand what I want to do and then do it. For a new business, that might be the person who's starting.
There will be people listening to this though, John, who think, well, if I want to be a car dealer, I need to know how to sell cars. And you are a prime example of someone who doesn't sell cars but has run very successful car dealership businesses. So there is hope for those people out there. I take it.
There's hope for all of us. There's hope for all of us. Yeah, and again, but that making sure you have someone you know, trust, love, that can do it for you, no matter. So you understand what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are. And if you're really good at selling cars, that's a great start to a business. You know, we started off, as I said, in a trade counter unit in Reading in the middle of winter. It wasn't pleasant, but I had James Cox there, who was our sales manager, lots of Volvo experience, and really helped me. You know, when I think they still shudder at the fact when we bought Swindon, and it was myself and Richard Spencer who were there in the first week selling cars. That was the week to get your car if you. I'm not sure we made lots of money, but we did shift some tin on the way through.
So along the way, John, is it? I mean, I do normally ask, you know, do you remember your first car sale? And is there a car that you've sold that really sticks out in your mind? I mean, for you, is there a deal that you've done over throughout your career that does really stick out? I mean, the Ridgeway one probably ranks quite high up there, but I imagine there's others along the way that might equal that.
I think the one that stands out was when we bought the Pentagon business. it was at a time where we were established, we were being seen as successful, and we were very closely associated with Volkswagen Group. Did we need to do it? No. Did we want to do it? Yes. But it amounted to doubling the size of the business. It took our gearing to 160%. So to put that into layman's language, that's your mortgage on your house, 160% of what it's worth. So that was a big step. And I remember after we'd done all the due diligence, after we were sure, we still had to go into a darkened room and say, do we really want to do this? And I think that was the making, because suddenly we went from that 160 million to a 300 million business. We went from Oxfordshire, Berkshire to Oxford, Berkshire, Hampshire, and a tiny little bit of West Sussex. So really, it grew the business and grew it overnight. So, we had to, go into the toolbox and bring out some of those skills we maybe sometimes didn't realise that we had. I think that was what then gave us the confidence that we could do more. And we could then take on more brands, which, when you look at where Ridgeway ended up in terms of, BMW Mini, JLR, the Volkswagen Group and the Mercedes-Benz Group, we had a lot of those premium German brands. And at the time, that was exactly where we thought. And you saw the growth between when we started the business in 97, 98 through to when we sold the business. Those were the right brands to have. Now my view is the best electric vehicle brands will be the winners going forward. And actually it's make sure that you select the best electric, and that might not be product, that may be around brand.
Do you think, John, that the car industry is a good place to work? You've clearly had a very, very long career in it that's been incredibly successful. I mean, what should people starting out in this industry be aware of? I mean, it gets a bad rap, as you've mentioned during this podcast, about the long working hours. Is it a good career?
Yeah, I think absolutely it's a great career. You can join with little or no qualifications in this trade, and you can end up general manager, regional manager, and actually have a really good earn. You can actually have a really great reward from this business. And it is exciting. And we do, if you look at what you could be involved in, as you can be involved in 20, 40-year investments that rely on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour sales performance. And it is, sometimes we are much more long-term than the manufacturers, but it does allow you to be part of that industry. And I think it's an industry that is developing, it is dynamic, that you could be in a better position to understand. And I think that's where I'm always, really cognizant of the fact that actually I'm getting older. I'm not as close to some of the things that could be the change. I don't have TikTok, I don't have Instagram, I don't have these, socials. I have socials that work for me personally, but as a business, I do customers want to talk on WhatsApp rather than email? So actually, how should we? But then I need to be challenged on that as well. So I think those are areas where you, as coming into a business that is learning to be more open. If you look 15 years ago to where we are today, it's a very different business in terms of, everything from who we'd expect to be interviewing. It's not the same old in terms of sales. Our apprenticeship program, our Product Genius program, we are looking at different ways of reaching out and finding new talent. And that's the part we need to get that consideration and more retail in front of more of our future leaders, our future talent. So yeah, no, absolutely. It's if anybody asks me, I say yes. I'm more than happy to bring in I've got family, friends, kids in the business. So yes.
What about, John, as part of that, the gender diversity? I mean, it's something this industry it really struggles with. I mean, I know trying to put together panelists for some of our big events, it's near enough impossible finding female leaders in this industry, especially on the car dealer retail side. How do we improve that? And is it something that you're passionate about fixing?
Yeah, we were, we were a very early member of the 30% Club. I met Julia at a conference. It must have been 2018, and that was really important to me. Because it's easy to say, well, in our business, we hit a lot of the 30% stats, for not only employment but for senior managers in our business. And I think we've just got to keep pushing it. We've got to keep pushing as hard as possible and making sure that it's more yeses than nos around about, female staff. But any part of the diversity agenda we should be thinking about, we should be addressing. I don't understand why it would be a problem, but it is a problem. And that's the part where I turn up to a lot of our events and I look around and it's white and it's generally male. And it's generally male of a certain age, and that's it. And that's not changing as quickly as it could or it should. But I think we've just got to keep reaching out to the talent of the future. I think we've got to keep promoting the individuals who represent that diversity as much as possible in the industry. And we've just got to keep banging that drum.
John, what do you think makes a great automotive industry CEO? What makes a great leader that inspires others?
I think you've got to care. If you can develop, I'm taking, you've got the intellect and the expertise and the experience. I'm taking that as almost a tick. Otherwise you probably shouldn't be there. But having that passion for what we do, having that passion for the brand you represent and for the customers that you serve and for the teams that you work within, those are all areas that, today I'm in Swindon. I'll be back in Oxford. We don't have a head office. What we've got is offices and meeting rooms within the boardrooms. I want to be actually at a site. I want to be wandering around, talking to the guys. And actually, we are just in the middle now of, I guess it'll be 10 nights, 10 evenings of going around and meeting the teams. And we do that every 5-6 months. Where it's here's what's happening everywhere else. Yeah, we do have the memos. Yeah, we do have the Waylands way that go out and tell you, but we're here. So if you've got any questions, let's ask it. But we'll tell you what we think is important and what's happening in the businesses. And you've got to commit to that. And I can do that where, a Robert can or a Dash can't, because he's got too many businesses. He's got to find other ways of doing it. But he's got more tools available to him than he's ever had. But you've still got to commit your personal time to do it. And I think the best guys, Robert does his videos, doesn't he? So I think it's actually having that commitment to doing it. But to have that commitment, you've got to care. You've got to have a passion. Otherwise, we just become a banker.
And who wants to do that?
And who'd want to be a banker?
John, who inspires you in this industry? Is there someone out there that you look up to and a mentor or someone you think they're doing it right and I want to be like them?
I think there's a lot. There's a lot of great guys. I guess when I look at John and Chris Clark, I do some non-exec with those guys. There's a reason why I do that. It's a big regional family business that does things in the right way, and maybe I see a few of the echoes, but they want to do a great job. They want to do a great job for the brands. They want to do a great job for their customers and for their teams. So that is, and I love having my conversations. I love listening to John on the way through. So driven, so wanting to do it. And then with Chris, you've got someone who's grown into that business and is now a true leader of what before long will be a billion pound business. So yeah, but there's so many. There is just so many people. You know, we've spoken about Dash, we've spoken about Robert. You know, these are guys who are driving the businesses. But then you look at Darren at Sitner, Eddie, what a business he's built. You know, because I think you've got those. Yeah, that business was started, but Eddie's driven it to new heights. And these are all guys. There's so many in this industry that I just love spending time with. And that maybe I should do more listening at the manufacturer events rather than having the conversations. But those little learnings you get, you know, I was with Darren Arden and Paul Hendy, and again, there's great guys. We've got so many great guys in and around the industry, and generally open, willing to have a discussion. You know, some things we can't talk about, but most things we can. And I think more than other industries, we do talk about it. And that's what I do, actually. I do, that would be one of my tics. That was one of the reasons I wanted to get back. I do enjoy what we do. I do enjoy the people we work with. I do enjoy the people we meet.
Yeah, certainly an incredibly talented bunch that we're lucky to be associated with in this industry. I'm very, very conscious that I've taken up a lot of your time, John, but my final question: is there something you wish you'd been told when you started in this industry? A nugget of information we can give people listening to this that will help guide them throughout their career?
I think, well, I'd take it further back than that, James. I'll take it back to I was a plodding auditor who'd got a little niche in car retail, and there's a chap called Mark Cummings in Melbourne, and he took me in an office, sort of like the one I'm in. We got out a flip chart, and he started taking down. He said, "John, I don't understand. Why aren't you? You seem to have that. You seem to have all these skills we want to talk about. Why aren't you doing something?" And I was like, "Well, it will arrive, won't it?" No, it doesn't. You've got to make it arrive. And I think there's a balance about jumping too soon. But if you know you're good enough to do a job, go get the job. If you feel you're being looked over, just make sure that they can hear you. So I'm not talking about, the noisy wheel always gets the oil. You don't want to always be noisy because there's a problem. You want to be noisy because you've got the talent. You want to be recognized. So that would be the part. Understand what you're good at, understand what your ambitions are, and then go and do it. And if you've got to influence, you've got to call, you've got to shout a little bit, go and do it. But it won't just happen for you. You've got to make it happen. And that's the part, you'll have done it. You've made a jump at some point, James, to do what you did. You're the founder of Car Dealer. You've done it. And I think we all need at some point to do that, to have belief in ourselves and then go and do it. So that would be the point. Believe in yourself and go and make it happen.
Incredibly
just get it right.
Just get it right. John,
just get it right timing.
Incredible advice. Thank you so much for giving up so much of your time today to chat to this podcast. I really, really appreciate it.
Not at all. Pleasure, James.
Lovely to see you. That's John O'Hanlon, CEO of Waylands Automotive. Now, to be notified about more podcasts in the Inspiring Car Dealer Leaders series, sponsored by Man Island Finance, please subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. And you can find the other episodes in this series on our website. It's cardealermagazine.co.uk in the podcast section, and you just need to scroll down on the homepage. We'll have another episode for you very soon, but for now, thank you very much for joining me. Goodbye.